They called it the Alliance of Hope. Dozens of alien races had joined hands, building a peaceful future after centuries of war. Humanity, the newcomers from the blue world called Earth, had earned their place among them not through strength, but through compassion, innovation, and honor. Among their closest allies were the Varnali, a tall, silver-skinned species known for their calm voices and diplomatic power. For years, they stood beside humanity in every council and mission. Commander Raina Locke remembered the early days well. She had once shared meals, stories, and even dreams with Varnali commanders. She had believed in their friendship. She had trusted them with her crew, her ships, and even her life. So, when the call came to fight the rogue, Narzan horde violent raiders, threatening peace, it was natural that humans and Varnali would fight side by side. Raina's fleet, small but well-trained, had moved forward bravely, ready to defend the fragile peace. Varnali ships flanked them, their sleek silver vessels gliding alongside Earth's steel-gray cruisers. For a brief moment, the stars felt safe. But that moment shattered in silence. Without warning, the Varnali ships turned. They didn't send a message. They didn't give a signal. They simply opened fire not on the Narzan, but on the human fleet. Raina's ship shook violently as explosions echoed through the void. Alarms blared. Crew members screamed in confusion and pain. A trusted Varnali cruiser had just destroyed the transport ship carrying Raina's engineers. Another had disabled Earth's medical vessel. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was cold, calculated, perfectly timed. Raina's heart pounded. She stared at the screen, unable to believe her eyes. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would they do this?" Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Jin, struggled to respond, his voice cracking. They turned on us, Commander. They're not helping the Narzan. They're helping themselves." Raina clenched her fists, forcing herself to act. "Emergency retreat," she ordered. "All surviving ships' jump coordinates. Get out now." Only a few made it out. From a fleet of 22 human ships, just 6 survived. The rest were gone, destroyed by those who once called themselves brothers. Raina's own ship had barely escaped, its engines flickering and wounded. As they floated through deep space, the stars felt colder than ever before. The official reports were vague. The Varnali blamed confusion, technical errors, and combat misunderstanding. The Galactic Council called it a tragedy. They issued no punishment. There were no trials. No justice. The galaxy turned the page like nothing had happened. But humanity didn't forget. Raina left her command soon after. She wasn't broken, but she was changed. The trust she once had in galactic diplomacy was gone. She didn't speak at the council hearings. She didn't write reports. She simply vanished along with many of Earth's finest minds, officers and visionaries. People thought Earth had accepted defeat, that humans were afraid, that they were retreating from the stars. They were wrong. Raina and the survivors were not hiding. They were preparing. In a quiet corner of space, beyond known star maps, something new was rising. A place called Arc Horizon, a hidden base, sanctuary, a forge there. Humanity wasn't building weapons of revenge. They were building the future. Raina stood at the edge of a viewing deck, looking out at a new generation of ships, silent, beautiful, strong. Ships that didn't exist on any registry. Crude by those who believed in truth, unity, and quiet strength. "They turned on us in battle," she whispered. "But they've forgotten who we are." She turned and walked away, her reflection fading in the glass. Behind her, the stars glowed not in anger, but with purpose, and humanity's silence was about to end. 5 years passed after the betrayal. The galaxy moved on, but Earth did not forget. They had lost their trust, their allies, and their place in the stars. But in that silence, something powerful began to grow. Not hatred, but clarity. Not revenge, but preparation. Humanity had chosen not to speak because they were too busy building something stronger than anger. Purpose. Arc Horizon had grown from a hidden base into an entire floating city, deep in the Nebulan shadow belt, far from any trading path. It was surrounded by asteroid fields that made it invisible to scanners. It was where the broken hearts of Earth came together. Scientists, pilots, engineers, diplomats, those who had felt the sting of betrayal, now worked in unity. Commander Raina Locke had changed. Her eyes still held warmth, but her voice carried a quiet strength. She no longer wore the uniform of the Galactic Accord. She wore something new. The symbol of the United Human Confederation, 3 stars woven into a circle, each star representing truth, memory, and hope. She walked down the long hallway of Arc Horizon's command center. Behind thick glass panels, teams of young cadets trained with advanced simulation pods. Engineers tested sleek silver-black ships that used silent thruster tech. AI companions with smooth voices guided construction bots. Everything was clean, precise, and quietly brilliant. Raina met with Admiral Torres in the strategy dome. He was older now, his face lined with wisdom, but his eyes were focused. "It's time," he said simply. Raina nodded. "The galaxy thinks we disappeared. But show them we didn't vanish, we evolved." Operation Resolve was not a mission of war, it was a mission of exposure. Humanity would not destroy the Varnali Empire with fire. They would take it apart with truth, light, and the power of unity. Raina's team had spent years collecting data communication records, secret treaties, and testimonies from oppressed worlds under Varnal control, but they didn't just gather evidence, they built something better. A new type of fleet had been designed. Not massive warships, but swift, silent cruisers with cloaking drives. Ships meant not to attack, but to travel unseen, to reach worlds that had been forgotten, to deliver hope. Each ship carried not only defense tools, but Truth Archive's portable data vaults that held evidence of what had really happened at Narzan. Raina stepped onto the command bridge of the flagship, clipsed on. Its walls were smooth black, its lighting soft blue, and its systems responsive. It hummed with quiet life. "All systems green," reported Lieutenant May. A young officer born after the betrayal, but trained with the fire of someone who had inherited a purpose. Raina looked out at the stars. They didn't feel cold anymore. They felt like a challenge. "Let's bring the truth home," she said, and with a soft ripple, Eclipse Dawn vanished into the shadows, leaving no trace behind. Their first destination was a neutral planet called Veralis. It had once been friendly to Earth, but after the betrayal, it had cut ties. Rumors said the Varnali had influenced their leadership with bribes and fear. Raina's team landed quietly outside the capital under a thick veil of darkness. They didn't go in with threats. They went in with open hands. A group of human diplomats met Veralis scientists in secret, showing them the Truth's video logs from the Narzan battlefield. Audio of Varnali commanders giving the silent order to attack human ships. Hidden messages. Between Varnali officials boasting of the manipulation, the Veralis leaders were shocked. Some wept. Some simply stood in silence. But most of all, they listened. Back on Eclipse Dawn, Raina received a secure message. "We believe you, the Veralis," Prime Minister said. "We were wrong to cut you off. If there's anything we can do, we're ready." Raina smiled softly, her voice gentle. "Just speak. Let others hear what really happened." That was the power of their mission, not force, but influence. Not destruction, but connection. Humanity wasn't trying to be the loudest voice. They were trying to become the voice that couldn't be ignored. As Eclipse Dawn moved on to its next destination, more ships followed. The silent fleet spread across the stars, planet by planet, truth by truth. Everywhere they went, something changed, not instantly, but deeply. People began to question the stories they had believed. The galaxy slowly started to realize humanity wasn't broken. They were building something bigger. And now, the silence was ending. The Varnali Empire had always appeared perfect shiny towers, calm speeches, smooth diplomacy. To the outside world, they looked peaceful and wise. But inside, something was breaking. And the ones causing the cracks were not warriors. They were truth-bringers. They were humans. Raina Locke and her fleet did not attack planets. They didn't force any world to choose sides. Instead, They gave them something more powerful than weapons. They gave them the truth. One of the Varnali's strongest systems was Rithian Prime. It was known for its mining colonies and strict rule. Reyna knew this planet well. She had visited it before the betrayal years ago. Now, it was their next stop. The eclipse dawn arrived quietly in orbit, hiding in the shadow of the moon. A small team of human agents, dressed in neutral clothes and speaking multiple alien languages, landed inside the busy industrial city of Grelos. Their mission was simple: contact the miners. For years, Rithion's mining workers had suffered under Varnali rule. Long hours, little pay, no voice, and no choice. But no one had ever spoken up. The media was controlled. Dissent was punished. People were afraid. Until now, Agent Kara, a former communications expert from Earth, met a group of miners in a rusted storage bay. The room smelled of metal and old fuel. His faces were tired but curious. Kara pulled out a small holodisk and placed it on the table. It lit up the room with a soft blue glow. A 3D image of the Narzan battlefield appeared. They saw ships turning. They heard voices. They saw betrayal. "What is this?" a miner asked, his voice shaking. "It's the truth," Kara said softly. "The Varnali betrayed us. Then they lied to you. They used the war to take control, and they hid behind their silence." The miners didn't speak at first. Then one woman stepped forward. Her eyes were full of pain. "Lost my brother in that battle. They told me he died fighting the Narzan. But he was on a medical ship. He wasn't fighting anyone." Kara nodded gently. "You were never told the truth, but we're telling you now, because it matters." Word spread quickly, not through loud announcements, but through whispers. In break rooms, in transport elevators, in quiet corners of noisy factories soon. A group of miners wrote a letter signed by thousands. It was addressed to the Planetary Council. It demanded transparency, better treatment, and answers from the Varnali governor. At first, the council ignored it. Then, a local technician broadcasted the holo recording during a public transmission. It was supposed to be a maintenance update. Instead, everyone watching saw the betrayal, and they couldn't unsee it. Protests began, not violent but powerful. People carried signs written in dozens of languages. "We remember Narzan. Truth is not treason. The Empire lied." The Varnali tried to silence them. They sent warnings, made threats, blocked news signals, but it was too late. The human fleet had already moved to another system. But the echo of their truth remained. The crack had formed, and it was growing. Reyna watched the updates from her command chair, her hands calm on her lap. "They don't need us to fight," she said quietly. "They just need to know we care." Lieutenant May turned to her. "Veralis has just held a public council vote. They've removed the Varnali ambassador and opened direct relations with Earth." Reyna smiled softly. "That's another voice. One more light in the dark." Back on Earth, news of these events brought quiet pride. People had waited for years, wondering if they would ever return to the stars with respect. Now, they saw that their patience and strength had a purpose. The United Human Confederation released a new message to the galaxy. "We do not seek war. We seek truth. We do not force change. We encourage it." And to those still afraid to speak, are listening. In hidden corners of the Empire, Varnali officials began to worry, not because of weapons, not because of ships, but because of honesty. Reyna and her fleet continued their journey. Each stop added a new spark, a new question, a new voice. And the Vernal Empire, once so confident and quiet, now found itself standing on shaking ground, because truth once released cannot be stopped, and humanity once silent was now the loudest voice in the galaxy. In the corners of the galaxy, far from the shining cities and powerful councils, there were quiet planets, forgotten by the Vernali Empire, ignored by the world, and left to survive on their own. These planets had no warships, no wealth, and no voice. But to Reyna Locke and her crew, they mattered more than anything. One of those planets was Thal and Minor Adrai, dusty world with wide orange skies and quiet villages. Years ago, It had been promised help by the Varnali Empire, had signed papers, made speeches, and even sent advisors. But when resources became scarce, the Empire pulled away. The people of Thalon were left with empty promises and broken systems. Reyna's ship, Eclipse Dawn, entered the planet's orbit silently. She didn't send military signals. She didn't demand attention. Instead, she sent a short message to the surface. "We are here to listen." It was the first time anyone had said that to the people of Thalon in years. A small welcome team met Reyna and her crew in the town of Solari, where the sand danced in the wind and children played near half-broken water stations. An older man, named Kale, the town's leader, looked at Reyna with cautious eyes. "You're human," he said. "We were told your kind ran away after Narzan, that Earth gave up." Reyna smiled gently. "We didn't run, we stepped back. To understand who we could trust and to prepare for something better." Kale nodded slowly. "And now we're back. Not for war, but for people like you." That evening, Reyna sat in a circle with elders, teachers, and farmers. They shared their stories, how Varnali traders had controlled their food shipments, how local leaders were replaced by imperial agents, and how speaking out meant losing your home. Reyna listened without interrupting. She didn't promise solutions. She gave them something else, her respect. Then, she opened her hand and showed a small, palm-sized divisa, truth beacon. "This carries what we've gathered, proof of betrayal, documents, hidden recordings. It's not for war. It's for you to use your voice, your way." Kale looked at the device. "And if we speak, what then?" "You won't be alone anymore," Reyna replied. Within days, the people of Thalon began to share their voice. They sent messages to nearby planets, joined human broadcast channels, and recorded testimonies. Farmers spoke about lost harvests. Children spoke about broken schools. Doctors spoke about outdated supplies and blocked medicine routes. Across the stars, people listened. One story about a girl who had walked 5 days to find clean water went viral across the galactic net. It touched hearts from distant moons to wealthy trade stations. People didn't see Thalon as a poor, dusty world anymore. They saw it as a mirror of what the Varnali Empire had ignored for too long. On another forgotten world, Lumia, something similar was happening. Reyna's team had delivered solar conversion kits, and in return, the locals gave them names of officials who had stolen aid money for years. Quiet investigations began. Former Varnali allies suddenly refused to speak in public. They feared exposure. The voices of the forgotten were now heard in every corner of the galaxy. Reyna watched the change unfold like slow sunrise. Planet by planet, truth was spreading not with fire but with feeling. The galaxy was waking up not because of battle, but because of empathy. Lieutenant May came to her side one evening as they watched a message from Thalon's children, thanking Earth for listening. "Commander," May said softly, "do you think this will be enough?" Reyna looked at the stars above them, each one now a possible friend, maybe not right away, but every voice we help find is one less soul in the dark, and together, voices can do what weapons never could. She reached out and tapped the glowing star map, placing a marker on another quiet planet, one more stop on their journey. Let's hear what they have to say. And so, the human fleet kept moving, not to conquer, not to punish, but to listen, to light the silent corners of the galaxy, to remind everyone, no matter how forgotten, that they mattered. The Varnali Empire had ruled through silence and control. But now, the silence was broken, and the forgotten had found their voice. The stars above Devoris Prime were calm and golden, but below them, something powerful was rising. For many years, Devoris Prime was one of the Varnali Empire's proudest jewels. Its shining cities, wide spaceports, and advanced factories were praised across the galaxy. The Varnali called it a model of harmony. But inside its tall towers, the truth was very different. Citizens of Devoris had no real voice. Their elections were controlled, their media was filtered, their leaders were Varnali-picked officials who smiled for cameras but answered only to the Empire. People lived well, but not freely, until the humans returned. Reyna, Locke's ship, eclipsed dawn, entered the system silently, like a shadow carried by light. But this time, they did not hide. This time, they wanted the world to see. They sent one broadcast. Just one. It was a collection of messages from the forgotten worlds like Thalon Minor, Bralis, and Lumia. Voices of farmers, students, doctors, miners, and even children. Each voice told the truth about the Varnal lies, control, and silence. And finally, Reyna herself appeared on the screen. "I am not here to lead your protest," she said calmly. "I am here to remind you that your voice belongs to you, not to any empire, not to any ruler, to you." That single message was all it took. The next morning, the central plaza of Devoris Prime was filled with people. They carried handmade banners. "We are not blind. Freedom. Listen to our silence before we speak louder." It started as a peaceful walk. No shouting, no violence, just steps. People came from every district, told men, students, workers, artists, mothers carrying children. They didn't want war. They wanted respect. At first, the Vernali officials ignored them. Then they became nervous. And when the protest reached the front steps of the Vernali Council Tower, panic grew. Vernali enforcement ships hovered above. The city, Reyna watched from orbit, silent and steady. Lieutenant May looked tense. "They might open fire." "No," Reyna said, "not with the whole galaxy watching." And she was right, because the protest was being live-streamed by dozens of human satellites. People on hundreds of planets were watching. Leaders from other systems had joined the broadcast, and for the first time in years, the Varnal Empire had no place to hide. One of the Varnali officers gave the order to deploy suppression drones. But just before the drones launched, something happened, something unexpected. The Varnali ship captains refused. "We will not fire on peaceful citizens," one of them said. "Live on the comes. This is not what we were trained for. This is not protection. This is fear." It was the moment the Empire trembled. In the plaza, the crowd began to cheer. Not because they had won anything yet, but because they knew they were finally being heard. Reyna closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. "That's the beginning," she whispered. Later that day, the Davros Prime Minister, silent and obedient, gave a speech in front of the council building. She had tears in her eyes. "For years, I was afraid. But today, I saw courage in the streets from students, workers, even children. And I realized I've been quiet too long. From this moment on, Devaris is no longer under Varnala command. We are free." The speech spread like fire. Other planets began asking questions. Other leaders began stepping down. Other Varnali allies started to back away from the Empire. It wasn't a war, it was a wave. And humanity had started it not with weapons, but with truth, patience, and respect. That night, Reyna and her crew stood together in the viewing deck. "Watching the stars?" "We didn't fire a single shot," said May, smiling softly. "We didn't need to," Reyna replied. "They forgot something important." "What's that?" "That humans inspire." She turned toward the galaxy spread before them. Each glowing star now held new meaning, a place where hope could grow. Reyna didn't smile out of pride. She smiled because something bigger was beginning. The Varnal Empire was no longer feared, and the galaxy was no longer silent. The Galactic Council chamber had never been this quiet. It was a grand hall floating above the star system of Velmorisa, place where laws were written, treaties signed, and speeches made. Every wall was polished crystal, every chair crafted. From the rarest metals, delegates from across the galaxy sat in wide arcs, their faces serious, their eyes focused. But today, no one was interested in ceremony. Today, the truth had come home. Reyna Locke stood in the center of the room, wearing a dark gray uniform without medals. She carried no weapon, no shield, and no anger. Just a small silver cube, the human truth archive. Her voice echoed calmly. "We were betrayed 5 years ago," she began. "But we didn't come back to fight. We came to understand, to expose, and to restore. Trust, not just for us, but for every species who's ever been silenced. The cube floated above her palm and lit the chamber with soft blue light. It began to play. Footage of the Narzan betrayal played first the moment the Varnali ships turned on the human fleet. Clear visuals, command recordings, tactical decisions, with no signs of confusion, as the Varnali once claimed. Then came the voices minors, children, teachers from forgotten worlds, each telling their story, each naming the silence they lived under. There was no shouting, no music, no drama, just quiet, undeniable truth. The Varnali delegation sat frozen. Their leader, Ambassador Telvin, a tall figure with glowing eyes and a smooth voice, had always spoken with calm confidence. But now his hands were shaking. These recordings are manipulated, he said weakly. They're meant to shame us. Reyna looked at him with calm eyes. Then call for an investigation. Let independent systems analyze the data. Let the people decide. The council members looked at one another. No one spoke for the Varnali. It's not this time. Delegate. Surin from the Talari Republic stood slowly. I supported the Varnali for years, Dodd, but after seeing what the humans have uncovered, I cannot stand beside silence any longer. More voices followed. We withdraw our trade agreement. Our citizens demand answers. The truth cannot be ignored. The Varnali Empire wasn't falling because of fire or war. It was collapsing because no one believed them anymore. The walls they had built with fear were cracking under the weight of honesty. The council voted that something rare and powerful. Sanctions would be placed. An open investigation would begin. And Earth would return as a leading voice in the Galactic Council. When Reyna left the chamber, she didn't feel victory. She felt balance. Outside, a crowd of peaceful supporters waited. They held signs in dozens of languages, all carrying the same message: truth wins without fire. Lieutenant May walked beside Reyna, smiling. We didn't just prove they were wrong. We reminded the galaxy who we are. Reyna nodded slowly. We didn't just come back. We made things better than before. Back on Eclipse Dawn, messages flooded the system's worlds asking to join the United Human Confederation. Activists requesting help. Former enemies reaching out for peace. The most surprising message came from a young Varnali scientist named Lurex. She had once worked on the Empire's defense projects, but had now resigned. I watched everything you shared. Her message said, I never knew how much had been hidden. I want to help now to rebuild, not control. Thank you for helping me see. Reyna read the message in silence. Then she smiled. This was never about revenge. It was about responsibility. The reckoning had come not with explosions or battles, but with clarity. The galaxy had seen. The Empire had been exposed. And Earth had done it all with quiet strength and unshakable truth, as the human fleet prepared for their next journey. Reyna gave one final message to her crew. We didn't need war to win. We only needed patience, unity, and the courage to speak when others stayed quiet. That's what it means to be human. The stars outside glowed brighter than ever before. The reckoning was done, and now a new future was waiting. The galaxy was changing. Stars no longer only whispered stories of old empires and silent betrayals. Now they sang songs of hope, courage, and new beginnings. Humanity, once pushed to the edge, was rising not as conquerors, but as guardians of truth and peace. Commander Raynalock stood on the bridge of the Eclipse Dawn, looking out at the vastness of space. Before her, countless worlds twinkled like gems, each holding new friends, new stories, and new dreams. Her heart was full not with pride, but with deep gratitude. The Varnali Empire had crumbled, not by fire or force, but by the strength of voices united and truth revealed. The Galactic Council had welcomed Earth back not as a threat, but as a partner. Together with other free worlds, they formed the Alliance of Free Stars, built on respect, honesty, and hope. Reyna's eyes found the symbol of the Alliance shining softly on her uniform, a circle of stars connected by a golden thread. It was more than a badge. It was a promise. Her first officer, Lieutenant May, approached with a smile. Commander, the Council has approved our next mission. And it's not military, it's rebuilding. They want us to help restore worlds damaged by silence and fear. Reyna nodded. That's the mission we've always had. Not to fight wars, but to heal. In the weeks that followed, the human fleet traveled from system to system. They helped repair broken communication networks, rebuilt schools and hospitals, and trained new diplomats who believed in listening first. On every planet humans met, leaders and citizens with open hands, offering friendship, not dominance. On Veralis, farmers harvested their first free crops in years. On Thalon Minor, children returned to new schools with teachers who finally had the tools to teach. On Devaris Prime, artists painted murals celebrating freedom and truth, and in the quiet moments between missions, Reyna would sit with her crew and talk about what had brought them here. We were betrayed, she would say softly, but we never lost ourselves. We didn't break, we learned. We grew. Her words were not just history, they were a guide. One evening, as the stars shimmered outside the observation window, Reyna received a message from Ambassador Lyrex, the former Vernal scientist. We have started reforms, Lyrex wrote. Not because we fear the past, but because we believe in a better future. Your courage showed us the way. Thank you, Reyna smiled. That is what peace looks like. The journey was far from over. The galaxy still held challenges, old wounds, and new hopes. But humanity had proven that they could lead not with weapons or power, but with heart and truth. As the eclipse dawn prepared to jump to the next system, Reyna took one last look at the stars. They no longer felt cold or distant. They felt like home, and in that vast, endless night, a new dawn was rising, one written not in fire but in light.